We're going to go ahead and get started. Can you hear me okay? All right, great. Thank you very much for being here. We have a packed house here in the library. We have another 24 or so folks online. Welcome to the first meeting of our 2023 year. It's fantastic to see you guys here. This slide says that we've been serving for the RGV for 20 years. This is actually going to be our 21st year. So we're one of the long-running chapters of the TMN program. I do have one announcement. Late December or so, we voted for a slate of officers. We do have one change. Adrian Wheatley has volunteered to step in as second vice president for our chapter after Yvette wasn't able to go ahead and fulfill the role. So congratulations to Adrian and thank her for volunteering to be the second VP. I want to let you know that we do have our class finalized. This slide is already out of date. I have 28 students. We're actually at 30. So we had 2 students that were finalizing and finishing up. One of them decided to back out and we have people that were already waiting. We already have a waiting list started for 2024. But it's, it's word of mouth. It's you guys volunteering. People know who you are, what you do, and they like it. And that's great for us. So this is 30 students, and you can see how they're spread out between Edinburgh to South Padre Island. Brownsville has the majority of folks that we have as students this year. As part of sort of wrapping up what we did in 2022, we served as volunteers a total of 13,719 hours, and that's your sweat. That's your dedication to volunteering with our partners in the RGV. The state roughly tries to put a dollar value to it, and at about $30 an hour, that equates to over $411,000 of your time that you dedicated to volunteer work. Cool. Now, it'd be fantastic if they gave us that money, but they don't. This just puts a dollar figure to the time and effort that you guys put in, which I think is certainly something that we should be proud of and recognize that this is the effort that you guys put in. At the same time, I want to recognize the 10 members of our chapter who put in the most time in 2022. And again, these are folks that went out of their way to go find something to do, whether it's to go out and help with the sea turtles patrol, to go out there and pull guinea grass at Ramsey, which is always something you can do anytime, day or night. All the things that you guys volunteer with, to monitor the reception desk at the SPI Birding Center, volunteering at WowWee, and so on and so on. These folks did the most out of our chapter, and congratulations to them for having put in all that time. They definitely make us proud.
Excellent.
Now, another thing that we definitely try to do within our chapter is recognize that there's always something else to learn. Just when you think you know it all, guess what? You don't, because something got changed, something got discovered. It was interesting that part of what we've been learning as far as butterflies go, they're discovering that there are new host plants for butterflies. So here, these guidebooks that you have isn't finished. And a lot of what we do is based as us as citizen scientists just watching and observing. And there's a lot of stuff for us to continue to learn. And in 2022, we dedicated ourselves and put in 1,687 hours of advanced training. That's you guys attending lectures, attending webinars, attending things for you guys to get better at what you do. And in our chapter, we have our top 10 scholars. These are the folks that logged the most hours when it came to advanced training. And again, this is something that we can all do. It's something that we all need, no matter what our specialty. There's something new and something fun for us to learn. So again, for these top 10 scholars, thank you very much for what you do to try to make us better as master naturalists. Now, every year we try to recertify. And this year we had 69 members of our chapter that went ahead and dedicated themselves to commit to 40 hours of volunteer work and 8 hours of advanced training. There are a few folks on this slide that have left the RGV, but I still wanted to recognize them because they were part of our chapter when they reached that milestone. And if you have achieved this recognition of getting certified for this year, and haven't gotten your pin, see Joni. She's eager to give you your pin. And again, for those of you that are trainees, and we have some of you here today, every year we try to certify with this 40 and 8 rule. 40 hours minimum of volunteer time, 8 hours of advanced training. And that earns you that year's PIN for the Master Naturalist program. In 2023, this is our PIN. It's the ecoregions PIN. And again, to earn this PIN, if I want another PIN in my hat, I need to put in 40 hours of volunteer time and 8 hours of advanced training. And that earns us this PIN. I'm going to ask Joni to come up because we do have some milestones to celebrate. And she'll come up and share some of these with us.
Okay.
I have 69 on the list from the beginning of whether they're with our chapter roster today or not. Excellent.
Okay. So I do have some people who are here. I'd like to recognize, wait, let me get my list. Sorry. Who have completed 100 hours of volunteer time, and they have also recertified. I'm going to name the 4 people who have the 100 hours. 2 of those people are here this evening. David Beto, Yvette Cano, Jeff Bradley, and Rebecca Guerra. So David and Rebecca are here. So if you would please come up. So they have earned the 100-hour PIN and the recertification PIN. And if somebody would like to take a picture of them, not me though.
What's that?
David, Rebecca, these are your PIN. De nada. You all can smile, not me, not me. Oh. Thank you. Congratulations, very well done. Okay, 250 hours. We have Cheryl Brummett, and she is here this evening.
Good.
And Cheryl was in the 2022 class, so she has really racked up those hours. Congratulations. Okay, Barbara Peterson earned the 500 hours. Barbara's not with us this evening, but she did earn 500 hours. And then last but certainly, well, let me backtrack. Recertification. We do have some of those people who have earned recertification pins with us tonight. Eileen Matee. Eileen, please come on up. And Carolyn Rothler, or Rotter, or how do you, Rotter? I'm not very good at those names. Thank you. Wait. Yes, please. Your recertification pin. Congratulations, y'all. So just real quick, at the December meeting, I had mentioned some of the people who had recertified, and between that meeting in December and the end of the year, we had some additional people recertify, other than Carolyn and Eileen, or Marlene. We had Carol Cardilli, Teresa DePau, or Du Bois, I'm sorry, Teresa Du Bois, Javi Gonzalez, of course, Rebecca Guerra. Just wanted to mention these people. Sandra Mink, Marsha Ralston Wood. Oh, Adrian, your pin, what did I do with it? And I know you're here. I had it in my hand.
There.
And I walked away with it. Come on up. Because you recertified. Sorry. Congratulations. That's recertification. Sorry.
Whoever Pat
Trying to
is.
do this quickly because I know we need to hurry up. Linda Povey, Kamala Platt, also recertified. Oh, and Pete Moore was mentioned last meeting. Now, last but certainly not least, I would like you all to congratulate Linda Butcher. Linda
Yes.
is originally from Fort Worth. She moved to the Valley in 2007. She was part of the class of 2009. Her
Hmm.
milestones are 250 hours in 2009, 500 hours in 2010, 1,000 hours in 2012, 2,500 hours in 2015, 4,000, which is again also a presidential award in 2018, and 5,000 hours in 2022. She was our chapter president in 2016. She's active in ACUS. She was the former president of the South Padre Island Port Isabel Shell Club. She's a great speaker on sea beans, and a majority of her volunteer time was at Ramsey Park. And she also did volunteering in the beach cleanup. You could often see her in beach cleanup on Boca Chica with her very close friend, Diane Ballesteros. So Linda, congratulations. We'd like to recognize you. This pin is for 5,000 hours. It's a gold dragonfly with a diamond. Yes. So Linda, please.
Get it.
Congratulations. So well done. Thank you. You're welcome.
Congratulations, Linda.
Thank y'all.
Thank you, everyone.
One last thing to share is, as a reminder, our state, the annual meeting that the state puts on together is going to be held in the RGV this year. It'll be based out of McAllen in October.
I have
All right, let's go on to our speaker for tonight. And I want to introduce Jann before she comes on up. Jann Miller is a native plant enthusiast who has been gardening in the Lower Rio Grande Valley since her arrival here in 1983. She joined the Native Plant Project in 1997 and soon became a volunteer at the Valley Nature Center under the directorship of Christina Mild. I think so many of us can say that. Christina Mild just sort of gets everywhere and has so much knowledge and is willing to share. There, Jann met many people who were knowledgeable about native plants and were willing to share their knowledge with her. She became a land steward for U.S. Fish and Wildlife and Texas Parks and Wildlife with the partnership of the late Bill McWhorter, her mentor and friend. Together, they spent many hours doing maintenance and re-veg work on two adjoining land tracts between Weslaco and Mercedes, the Adams Tract for Texas Parks and Wildlife and the Mercedes Tract for Fish and Wildlife. These two tracts eventually became Esterillana Grande State Park, one of the world birding centers. She is currently president of the Native Plant Project. So we welcome Jann as our speaker for tonight. And you can just pin that.
It looks like it's going to stay, huh? Okay, thank you. And I want to thank everybody for coming out this evening to listen to what I have to say about springtime in the Rio Grande Valley. I want to make a shout out to two of my very important nature groups that I am a member of. One is the Native Plant Project, and this organization was founded in 1982. And so last year we turned 40 years old. And it was started by people who were interested in conservation. They were concerned about the loss of habitat here in the Rio Grande Valley, and they had a particular focus on native plants. And so our mission is to collect and then share information on native plants with the general public. We meet the fourth Tuesday of every month from September through May, except for December because it's just too close to Christmas. And we have speakers. Our meetings are at the Valley Nature Center in Weslaco. Our next meeting will be on January 24th, and we will have Barry Nall, who's one of our local butterfly experts, and he's going to be speaking about taxonomy and how it relates to butterflies and their host plants. It should be very interesting. So I hope to see you there. Also, the other organization that I'm very close to is ACUS, Arroyo Colorado Audubon Society. I'm one of the founding members. We were founded in 2000 by some people who wanted to promote birding in the valley and who thought that we needed another Audubon Society here. It's a very active group. They have meetings September through May, including December, and they meet on the second Thursday of every month here at the library in the same room. And their focus, of course, is on birding. They have interesting speakers. They have field trips every Saturday after the meeting. So there'll be one this Saturday. The meeting will be, our meeting will be Thursday, and it starts at 6 here. And the speakers will be Sue Griffin and Billy Snyder. And they're going to talk about birds, plants, and other things. And with the plants, they're going to be talking about native plants. So you might be interested in coming for that. I'd love to see you here. And another special thing, I'm bringing refreshments. So, so anyway, hope to see you there. Now, in talking about spring in the lower Rio Grande Valley, I'm going to be talking about the four most southern counties in Texas, which are Cameron, Willacy, Hidalgo, and Starr. And we'll be talking about native plants that grow in these areas. It was kind of hard to choose which plants to share with you because there's so many.
That's
But
what
I
I'm
tried to
doing.
focus on the plants that only bloom in spring, if at all possible. I might have added a few that bloom throughout the year. A lot of plants start to bloom in spring and then they bloom throughout the year. But these are things that typically only bloom once during the spring. So it'll be the typical sequence of spring blooming in native plants. The first one I want to mention is pink mint or Drummond's mint. It is the first to bloom. Actually, mine started blooming in November this year. It's sort of a cold weather plant. It's an annual, and it reseeds itself with these neat little black seeds here. Let's see. And let's see, I'd like to focus on that. Let's see, was it the top button, Robert? Let me see. For some reason, it's not doing its thing, but that's okay. I mean, they can see the little, it's a close-up picture. This plant readily reseeds with these tiny seeds. Once you have one plant in your yard, you're going to have a lot. Oh, did I have it reversed? Wouldn't you know? Thank you. Okay. Yeah, so it is it's the first nectar source. So it's covered in bees. You can hear the humming as you walk up to the colony of plants. So it's very valuable. Okay, the next one is the huisache, and it is our iconic harbinger of spring here in the Rio Grande Valley, the first tree to bloom. All you have to do is walk outside in the morning and you can just smell it, especially if you live on the edge of town like I do. And the essence of these flowers was discovered by our first colonists, particularly the Spaniards. And they took seeds from this tree back to Spain with them and germinated them and grew them. And the essence of the flower is used today in some of our finest perfumes. And this has been going on for hundreds of years. So yeah, and some people say it's already starting to bloom. I haven't seen it yet around my house. Awesome, wonderful. So we have something to look forward to then. That's great. Okay, the next one are the prickly poppies. Now, these photos that I'm sharing with you are from my yard, with the exception of a few. And so they're pictures I've taken over the last few springs. These three colors here, white to dark pink, and even goes on to maroon. I've never been lucky enough to grow those. These flowers are all considered red poppy. And that we have 3 different species of poppy in the lower Rio Grande Valley. And this is considered the red poppy. This is one species. Another species is considered the golden prickly poppy. I have the scientific names in parentheses, but for time's sake, I don't want to say those. I'll give you the common names. And this is a beautiful, it's got a big flower, big lacy flower. And the distinguishing characteristic is the stamen in the middle have a dark brown color, and there's a lot of them. So that's how you can tell that one. The next photo, and this is from Robert, is the Mexican poppy. And the bloom is a little bit smaller. I think these were taken at Ramsey. And the center does not have the dark brown stamen. So those are the 3 different poppies. I've never had the fortune of having the 2 yellow species to grow yet in my yard. Hopefully I will one day. The next plant I'd like to mention is the pearl net leaf milk vine, or the pearl milk vine. And the wonderful quality of this plant is this little dot that grows in the middle of it, which shines. It has a luminescence and it looks like a pearl. I grew mine in a pot under a granjeno, which was growing up into my mesquite tree, and it continues to twine up that way. The flowers are usually in a cluster like this, and the seed pod up above here has a lot of tubercles on it. And these split open after a while and dry out and then fly all over your yard if you're lucky. Okay. This is a prostrate fleabane. I admired this plant for a long time before I ever got one to put in my yard. And it does really well in pots. And it's an early spring bloomer, perennial plant, and it's a good nectar source as well. And in this slide, I have some type of a little bee or a fly. I don't know. We have a lot of native flies too, that's getting nectar from it. The ratama. Okay, when the blooms of the huisache have already fallen off and going to seed, the ratama blooms. And it's a very showy plant. It has bright green trunks, and the stems, the trunk, and the petioles provide most of the photosynthesis. So that makes this plant very comfortable thriving down here in a semi-arid biome like we have here. And some of the petals, as you can see here, have a little bit of red in them. Very pretty plant. The upper photos were taken from my yard. And this one is taken against an Anaqua that happened to be blooming at the same time. These flowers are also great for pollinators. And then there's another really special plant that I was lucky to have for a while in my yard until it decided to go away. But it's duraznil. It is our native peach tree. And it's endemic to Texas. It grows in the sandy soil of northern Hidalgo or Starr counties. The shrubs are 4 feet tall or taller. I've seen them much taller than 4 feet, like maybe 7 feet tall at a ranch in that area there. The white flowers attract pollinators, bees, and they produce a drupe, which is the peach right here. And they say that when they ripen, I didn't get mine to ripen in this color, but they say they turn red or orange in the wild. Mine just kind of turned a brownish color. But I saved the seeds, and I had one baby come up, this one here, and he didn't last too long, but I was really proud of it while I had it. The birds usually get this, or other animals, mammals, get these seeds before a human can. So, you know, anyway, this is a special plant. The spotted tuberose, or Manfreda maculosa. We have 4 different species of Manfreda that grow here in the valley. And this is the first to bloom. And it is a host plant of the Manfreda giant skipper. Now, no one has seen a Manfreda giant skipper for quite a while. I think the last one reported was in 2004 in northern Hidalgo County. This is a somewhat rare plant. It's being propagated right now by the National Butterfly Center in Mission because they have acquired some land from the Nature Conservancy, which used to be Chihuahua Woods. And their sole purpose for acquiring that land is to raise a lot of this Manfreda maculosa on the property in an effort to attract the Manfreda giant skipper. So they're propagating lots of it. I have 2 plants that are in pots. They do well in pots. This one happens to be a purple morph. See, the foliage is purple. And I have another one that's green, and they came from the same clump. But the flowers are so fragrant. They're beautiful. They send out their scent in the evening, and it's just a magnificent smell. I really enjoy it. Southern pepperweed. This is a plant that the late, great Joe Eidecker told me about when I first started learning about native plants. And it is one of the early bloomers. It's a herb, and it's in the cabbage family. And these narrow seed pods here, if you can see them, grow up and down the stem after the flowers have bloomed. They're called siliqua, or siliques in plural. They form long rows below the flowers, and they're edible. If you pick one of these little pieces up and put it in your mouth and bite it, it has sort of a horseradish type taste to it. Okay. Anyway, they taste sort of like a radish, and they're used a lot in salads. Really good. The first native cactus to bloom, in my experience, is the pincushion cactus. These also grow well in pots. They send a little circle, like a little crown of blooms that range from brown to light purple. And after the blooms are spent, then they make these little chilies that, like a little ring of red chilies around it. It's really easy to maintain. Just leave it alone. You can overwater it, so just put it in a pot, a clay pot, and leave it alone. The coral bean. Okay, this is another thing that spreads. If you have 1 or 2, you're going to end up having several. But all parts of this plant are poisonous. And the hummingbirds love it for the nectar. They fight over it in the spring. the indigenous people used to use these red seeds that are in the seed pod for necklaces and string them. I guess they were immune to the poisonous nature of the plant, but I wouldn't recommend doing that. But it's a beautiful thing, and like I said, the hummingbirds just love the nectar. Prairie milkweed. This has become very popular all over the state. It has a widespread range, and a lot of the efforts that people are making to support the monarchs on their migration, a lot of these groups are planting scads of this, and the monarchs, queens do use this as a host plant. So it's widely used in butterfly gardens. The next cactus that blooms is the devil's head or the horse crippler cactus. And after it blooms, it puts out these beautiful red balls of seeds, and they're readily eaten by birds. So I have this coming up in a lot of my pots where I didn't plant it originally because the birds have put it there. But they really love the seeds. It's a beautiful thing, but of course, you've got to be very careful around it. And it's another one that you just leave alone. You put it in a pot, you basically let the rain take care of it. All right. Texas prickly pear cactus. Around Easter every year this blooms. And the basic color really is yellow, as you probably know. But as you get closer to the coast, there are colonies of brightly different colored prickly pear blooms that I have particularly enjoyed through the years. And of course, the fruits turn into tunas that are eaten by various animals and people. The indigenous people, evidently down here, there's historical records of them moving camp twice a year in order to get closer to the big growths of the prickly pear cactus to the tuna after it fruits. And one of the areas reportedly was just north of the Aurora, Colorado in Cameron County. One year, my good friend Ken King and my daughter Rachel and I went out along Boca Chica Beach and along Highway, I think it's 48. And we got like one pad off of different colors, and we planted them alongside a fence in my yard. And all of these different colors bloomed. And you can see here that it's sort of like along the fence. And I particularly like the one that's white. It's the palest yellow you can imagine, but it looked like white. And I really enjoyed that. I don't have it now. It was taken over by guinea grass and some things because it's really outside my yard. And working with prickly pear is not easy. So it lasted a good 2 years and we really enjoyed it. Another plant I have that's fairly rare that I'm proud of is the Rio Grande butterfly bush, or teposan. It is, you all have probably heard of or planted the other types of butterfly bush. Well, this is a direct relative of it, but it's native. And it occurs here in the Rio Grande Valley, never far from the banks of the Rio Grande. The flowers, when they bloom in clusters of kind of golden, yellow-green flowers, tiny flowers. But they're covered in bees and pollinators, and you can just hear the buzz as you get near. The flowers have a sort of a pungent smell, which I kind of like. Other people think doesn't smell so good. My friend Ken King says it smells like the inside of a dog's ear. Some of you may like that, I don't know. This is another beautiful plant, the California loosestrife. It grows along the ditch banks and in low areas in the lower Rio Grande Valley, particularly in Cameron and Willacy counties. And it has a showy fuchsia color. This will grow well in plastic pots because it grows near water and it's in Cameron County. I learned something from Barbara and Robert. This is also a loosestrife, which they found with white blooms in a field in San Benito after rain one spring. And it's called winged lithrum. The purple that I'm showing you up here is Lithrum californicum, and this one is Lithrum alatum, variety lanceolatum. I've also seen a white variety of the California loosestrife, but it's fairly rare. These make a real showy potted plant. Then Bailey's ball moss. Okay. This is really not a moss, it's an epiphyte. It's not a parasite. It uses trees or shrubs for support. It will attach itself to them, but it in no way harms the plant. It exists off of water vapor and air, and that's how it gets its nutrients. If you see it in the wild and it's on the ground, then it's usually doomed because squirrels eat it, or it ends up getting dried out because it doesn't get enough ventilation and it'll dry rot. So I usually rescue those when I see them, and I take them home and put them in wire baskets like this. And they're beautiful when they bloom. They bloom in the spring. They make these bright purple flowers. It's our native bromeliad, essentially. And the hummingbirds fight over it. Spring ladies trusses. This is one of our native orchids. And you're going to see it growing in low places, and especially in the sandy areas close to the coast. At the Nature Center on South Padre Island, close to the boardwalk, there's a grassy area in there, and that's where I first saw this growing. And it does really well in pots. And it has sort of a tuber for a root. Twisted rib cactus is the next to bloom. And it's very prolific in Cameron County and Hidalgo. It grows in the wild. And it has these very pretty bicolored flowers with a red center. It's one of our native barrel cactus. Basket flower is a real staple for a butterfly garden. These flowers do not have ray flowers. They only have disc flowers. And the butterflies love them. Bees love them. And the birds eat the seeds when they're dried up. They like to eat the seeds, especially goldfinches. And they'll use the chaff to build their nest, to line their nest with. This plant has an unusual quality in that if it is touched, if the area is touched, say around the inside, those parts of the flower will move in a wave-like movement. It's called nastic movement, and it is the kind of movement that plants make in response to touch. And I found out about this by bringing some to work in a vase that I cut. And one of the ladies in the office touched it because it was so pretty, and the inside moved. And that caused quite a sensation at work. And I went home, and yes, the ones in my yard did the same thing. So if you see a basket flower, try it. It's really awesome to watch. Turnsole, or Indian heliotrope, is another good butterfly plant because the monarchs can't stay away from it. They literally are always around it. This isn't a great picture because they wouldn't stop moving, but if you have a plant like this, even after it starts to die, they're clustered around it because it has a high alkaloid content. And there is one specific alkaloid that the queens require in order to create pheromones. So I think it's a beautiful flower. It doesn't bloom very long, but when it does, the blooms are blue. It's our only blue heliotrope, a native heliotrope that has a blue flower. And I use it in groupings, like in a pot with other plants. because it just lends itself to a nice look. There it is right there. Texas vervain, I especially like because of the growth form. In a native butterfly garden, it has a wispy growth, and it just looks really nice when you mix it in with other plants of different structure. The flowers are small and they're lavender to blue, and it blooms from spring into summer. And I use it in container gardening. This, you can't see it very well, but it's kind of coming up the edges here and sprawling out in the front. And it really looks good when you put it with other shorter sprawling plants. The pencil cactus, or the rat tail cactus, also blooms in the spring. In the wild, you're going to see this mostly in western Hidalgo or Star counties. And these cacti grow up into shrubbery for structure. Left alone, they're very lanky and they would snap over and break, but they grow up into a structure. I use a trellis for mine to grow up into. The flowers are spectacular, and they're also good pollinators. The purple pleat leaf iris is another one that's very showy, and it grows in the sand sheet, in the sandy northern part of the valley. But it does very well in pots, in clay pots, and it's showy. I use it again in a combination pot like this. I don't know if you've ever tried to grow the non-native irises down here, but good luck. They don't do well at all. It's just not the right climate for them. And this little guy is really beautiful, and it likes the valley a lot. Easy to grow from seed. They make a lot of tiny little seeds. Very showy. This is our other native iris, and it is pale blue-eyed grass. It's not a grass, of course. It has long, you can't tell very well from this photo, but it has these long leaves like that grow, kind of like lily leaves. It grows well in clay pots, and it's really stunning when it blooms. It only blooms once in the spring. Then the ladyfinger cactus would be next. And these are prostrate branching cacti. The flowers are beautiful. Then they have a creamy to white center. The western populations have a thicker stem than the eastern populations. This cactus grows pretty much all over the valley. And it does well in clay pots. And this is the other one that blooms next. And it is in the same family as a lady's finger, Echinocerius. And this one especially grows along the banks of the Arroyo Colorado. It was considered to be rare when I first started learning about native plants. But once I started getting out in the field, especially around the Arroyo, it's everywhere. And so I just think it's a gorgeous thing when it blooms. And it only blooms in the spring. Okay, now when to plant. All right, I'm not a meteorologist, so I'm just telling you from my perspective, the three times of year that are best to plant, from best to worst. But we have 3 wet times a year. One is in September, and that's a calm ground soaking rain usually. The other one is in December, and it's also a pretty calm soaking rain with occasional freeze. And then again in June, which is a little more unpredictable. I call it our monsoon season because we have thunderstorms with this, lightning, sometimes hail, and occasional flooding. So the best time to plant is around Labor Day, either the end of August or early September. Even though it's broiling hot outside and it seems counterintuitive to be planting anything, it is the best time to plant, especially for trees and large shrubs, because the September rains will come along and allow the root system to take a good hold. And then, especially through the fall when the weather gets cooler, then we have our December rains that add the advantage to that. The second best time is in the fall before the December rains. especially for small trees, shrubs, and some seeds from the northern part of the lower Rio Grande Valley. And then the third best time rather, to me, is between late February and mid-April, and that's spring. And if you've grown up somewhere other than the valley, this just seems crazy because they want you to get out and plant in the spring. That's the time, right? Well, if you plant here in the spring, you're going to have to water a lot because in March we have these wild, strong winds that come and dry things out. And you're really not going to get a significant amount of rainfall again until mid-May or June. And then that's kind of iffy. It could be a major flood or a storm. So to me, it's the third best time. But hey, if it's your time, if it's your only time, do it. I mean, plant. The worst time to plant is in summer. From the first part of June through, say, mid-August, it gets really hot down here. And if you plant during that time, the plant's going to have to struggle. The roots are not going to be able to get well established because it's going to be really hot and dry. And you're going to have to water and water and water. You can do it, but you're going to have to work really hard for that plant to stay alive. Now to mulch. I definitely recommend mulching, especially down here, because it maintains the moisture around your plant and it protects from heat and cold. It prevents the growth of volunteer plants that want to come up all around your precious native plant and crowd it out. And it enriches the soil by decomposing and providing nourishment for the plant. When to mulch? Well, anytime you have a new planting, mulch around it. And I recommend about 3 to 4 inches rather of mulch around the plant, but keep it away from the trunk of the plant, 2 or 3 inches, because if you put it on the trunk, then you might promote too much moisture and you may cause rotting of the trunk. Reapply it about twice a year, maybe December, January, and then again in June. And you reapply it when you see that it's getting, the levels going down, getting thin, or getting scattered around by animals or people walking through it. Okay, that essentially says what I just said. Now, also, I highly recommend mulch for walkways for nature parks, and because it's a lot quieter than gravel or concrete. If you want to see wildlife, you're going to scare them away if you crunch, 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 down the walk. So what kind of mulch? Well, make sure it doesn't have trash in it or tough fibers of plants that aren't going to decompose for you. And I use McAllen Recycling Center. I just feel like they're a good place and I want to promote them. I want to give them my business. I wish there was something like that here around Harlingen. I'd go there, but we just don't have that right now. A lot of folks collect bags of leaves off the curb, especially oak leaves, make good mulch as well. And some people, if you're really energetic, after they prune their plants, they snip, snip, snip and make little pieces and use that for mulch. Or you can buy a mulcher, I hear, a mechanical mulcher. But I go to McAllen for recycling. Fertilizer. Do we need fertilizer? Well, native plants don't need much fertilizing because they have evolved with their own methods of getting nutrients in the soil that they come up in the wild. However, if we take them out of the wild or we plant them in disturbed or unhealthy soil in our yard, then they need a little help with fertilizer. And I recommend fertilizing twice a year, late December or June for spring growth and June for summer growth. And I like to use the granule time release fertilizer because it's dry and lightweight. It comes in a container that's already built for shaking, and it doesn't require mixing with water. And you can cover large areas with it too by scattering it. I use Osmocote Plus, indoor, outdoor. 1 capful equals 3 tablespoons per 1 gallon pot or 4 square feet of soil. And so they recommend it to mix it into the top 1 or 3 inches of soil. Okay. You can do that, but I do it the lazy way. Before I mulch or top off a potted plant with soil, I sprinkle it in and then add soil on top. And that way it's mixed in fairly well. Or I do it before I mulch. And that way it's covered with not soil, but mulch. The research has shown that the nutrients are much better distributed from the granules to the plants if it's covered with soil of some sort. And then after you sprinkle it, you need to water regularly to water it in. Preparing for summer. All right. Guess whose toes those are? They're in this room. This is some summertime plant ideas. Okay, I've already said keep mulch 3/4 an inch deep. That's very important. Keep mulch. It protects you through the summer. And you can prune in the summer. I recommend it because if your plants get leggy, the ends, it takes more energy for that plant to provide water to the ends of a long stem, and it will dehydrate. So I cut my branches back about halfway. That still allows for enough leaves for photosynthesis, but it also leaves some room for new growth. And then, of course, you keep the ground around these plants soaked with water at regular intervals. And the way you know is just put your finger down. If it feels really dry for several inches down, then it's going to need some water in the middle of the summer. Okay, for pots, just fill the containers with about an inch more water than above the soil level, and also keep them watered at regular intervals and allow them to drain out. For cacti, only in the summer do I water them, and very lightly, maybe every 2 weeks, late June to late August. The rest of the year, I allow them to just have rainwater. Because think about the difference in rainfall between Starr County and Cameron. We get a lot more rain down here. If you're planting a cactus that is native to Starr County and you put it in a pot here in Cameron County and then you water it on top of rain, it's going to rot. I've learned that the hard way. So just really try not to overwater your cactus. Caring for your potted plants. I believe in potted plants. As you can see, these are all taken in my backyard. And I love working with containers. My daughter, who lived in California and came back to the Valley, told me all about container gardening. It's being used all over the United States right now. Because people that live in apartments and only have a patio or maybe a small patch of outdoor space, but they want to enjoy plants, they use containers. And we're lucky down here. We have access to some beautiful pottery, which I'll get to in a second. Also, you have greater flexibility as to when to plant because you have easier access to your potted plants. And I only put seeds in pots to start seeds. I don't put them in the ground. I put them in some type of a pot. Better mobility, easier to cover if we have a frost or ice. Easier to weed. I hate to use that word, but you can take unwanted seedlings out of a pot very easily. And a lot of the things I get, they're not really weeds. They're things the birds have planted, and I take them out and repot them for friends. Rare plants that you really treasure, don't put them in the ground. Put them in a pot because they're just going to last longer. Okay. And terracotta quartz, there's different kinds of pots you can use. You see, I have a visitor here in this pot that I didn't notice until I was right up on it. Scared me to death, but it's a spiny lizard. And it's in a pot with Jatropha cathartica or jicamilla. These are pots for my yard here. Of course, there's terracotta pots. They're easy to obtain. You see them for sale everywhere, but you're limited as to size and shape. And the sides are thin, and the plant dries out really quickly. Aluminum troughs are really fun. I get them at the Tractor Supply and drill holes in the bottom of it for drainage, and you can put huge groupings of plants. Okay. So yeah, the aluminum is fun to work with, and our natives do well in it. They don't seem to drown in it like they do in plastic. All right, the plastic containers are next, and you know that's what that's what I started out with, was plastic, all plastic. But I found out the hard way that it's not ideal for most of our natives because it retains too much moisture. The exceptions are if the plants are native to Cameron or Willacy County, where the rainfall is high, or if your native plants come from a wet area or a low area, so they like water, they like to keep their feet wet. Then there's Mexican pottery, and this is my favorite. And by that, I mean the clay pottery that you find in the import stores or on the stands along the highway for sale. The clay is porous. It drains well for our natives down here. The plants seem to live longer and they feel more at home because after all, 180 years ago, this was Mexico. So Mexican pottery, I'm going to call it. And it's fairly inexpensive if you get it at an import shop. If you try to buy it at Lowe's or Home Depot, they're going to jack up the price really high because it's special and different. They don't know that we already have special and different down the road. They'll also have Talavera pottery, which is beautiful. That's that glazed pottery at these import shops. But I'd steer away from that as a pot because it really doesn't drain well. It's kind of like plastic, but it's beautiful. Some of these clay pots are sealed with a black tar-like substance inside them, and some are not. And I'll talk about what's best for what. The reason they put the seal is to retain moisture and to preserve the integrity of the pot, because these pots are not going to last forever. But as they sort of break down, they're even pretty thin. I mean, they're really nice to use. To choose your Mexican pottery, here's how I do. Here's my little rule of thumb. If your native is from Stark County, or if it's a cactus or a succulent, I put it in an unsealed Mexican pottery because it's the most porous and drains the best. If it's native to Hidalgo, then I use the sealed or the unsealed, either way. If it's native to Cameron or Willacy, I use the sealed clay or plastic. Or if it thrives near water, I'll put it either in the sealed or the plastic. And here's how I find out where they're from if I don't already know. Some of it's just been experience being out in the field, but a lot of it I have to refer to Plants of Deep South Texas that's written by King and Richardson, because with each plant, there's an area called distribution, and it tells you what counties the plant is from. Also under comments, which is the last section under the plant, it's going to talk about sometimes, many times, the preferred soil type of the plant. So that's how I determine what kind of container to use. The best practices on potting, I do not use rocks in the bottom. I learned from sad experience that it takes one rock that fits right into the drain hole in the bottom, and all of a sudden your plant starts dying. You don't know why, so you give it more water. Well, it ends up flooding. And I've lost some wonderful plants that way, so I would never recommend rocks, especially if you use clay pottery, because it's already going to absorb a lot of that moisture. You don't really need rocks. I put a folded paper towel in the bottom to plug up the whole wall we're putting the soil in. But after a while, it just sort of makes a natural seal. I put, if you have a straight side on a pot, of course, it's going to allow for more root growth than if you have a pot that slants inward. For cactus, round or oblong flat pots, they don't need a whole lot of depth to them, and if you do try to plant them in a deep pot, they're likely to rot. Shrubs, woody shrubs, you can use a deeper round or square pot for them. And a large woody shrub or small trees, you can buy really large round or square pots at these import stores. Okay, the best practice for potting as far as things like soil, usually you can top it off twice a year right after you sprinkle Osmocote in it. Late December, mid-June, or any time that you feel like the soil level is falling. It will do that. It will become more compact. Also, the plant uses the soil. It breaks it down and it will start to disappear. The soil mix I use, pruning. In a pot, you want to keep your plants pruned because you don't want the upper growth to get too much larger than the root system in the pot. So it's good to prune it frequently. The soil mixture I use here was recommended by Ken King. You get your favorite organic potting soil, 40 dry quarts, that's a big bag. You add perlite to it, 16 dry quarts. And if you get the Miracle-Gro perlite, it usually comes in the 8-quart bag. So I'd put 2 of those to this bag of potting soil. 1/3 cup blood meal, 1/3 cup of bone meal. And for cacti, you can add 1 or 2 quarts of crushed shale to keep it dry. Seeds. Okay, this is the last section. My definition of seeds are little miracles waiting to happen. And here's my philosophy. If we humans collect seeds, it is our unspoken duty to plant them or share them with other humans who will plant them. There's no need to stockpile seeds and never plant them just because we can. Okay. And seeds are so wonderful and they're so different. In this case, I didn't get out there fast enough, this fiddlewood. The birds ate up all the seed before I could get to it here. And this is on the Bailey's ball moss. It makes a very unusual type of a wispy, these little particles that fly through the air, and on the end of them is this teeny tiny little bromeliad. It's the cutest thing. And this one here, of course, is in the pea family. And I have several of those in my yard that I really love, different types of vines. When to collect seeds? Any time of year. Just wait and watch for them. The plants we've been talking about that bloom through in the spring, a lot of them keep continuing to bloom through the rest of the year as well. What you do, or what I do, is I wait. If I know there's a plant that I really love, but it's not in my yard or somewhere else, I'll watch it bloom. And usually that's after rainfall, right down here. And I watch it, and it makes for some really fun road trips, you know, to get to go out there and see how the seed is progressing along. And then finally, when it's ripe, you get to collect it and then try to grow it in your yard. So you just watch and wait. A lot of like I said, the plants I've been talking about, they do bloom in the spring. You just watch them for their seeds to mature. When are they ripe? Okay, when the stem of the seed pod is brown and it's no longer providing nourishment to the seed. And when the seed or the seed pod has turned brown or beige or light color, different than green, it's getting ready, or it is ready. Green seed pods mean not ready. Please don't make the mistake of collecting a ton of green seed pods, because you're wiping out that collection of seed. It's not going to mature. It's not mature. It's not going to germinate, and you're essentially killing those seeds. If you can't check often on the plant, If it's far away from you, you can put an organza bag around it that you get at the dollar store in the wedding section and tie it off and then go back and check it later. Because these seed pods usually inherently will pop open and throw the seeds far and wide. So if you can't get to it in time, bag it up with this organza bag. And how do you collect? Please use both hands. If you just go and grab a seed pod with one hand and pull it, you could take the whole plant out, or you could take a whole branch off. There's no need to do that. A lot of seeds have nodules just above the seed pod on the stem that are easy to break. And especially in the pea family and in the mallow family. Wait, I meant to say it. Okay, well, that didn't work. But anyway, seed collecting can be a lot of fun. I quite enjoy it. I store everything in paper for seeds, not plastic bags, because it'll grow mold and it'll kill the seed. This is Guayacán here on the bottom, and I thought it was so beautiful. It was making seed right before Christmas that year, and I thought it was a pretty Christmassy look. This is a seed from the Chihuahuan balloon vine. Ken had never seen this before. I had a plant and it went to seed this year, and I collected these seeds, and the seeds are much larger than the balloon vines that grow here in this area, which is interesting. So here we go. Put them in paper bags and secure them with a paper clip because you're going to want to add more seeds. Label the bags with the plant's name and the collection date. I said that plastic bags restrict air exchange and they don't allow for oxygen. And before you plant your seeds, soak them overnight in what starts out to be kind of hot water and very quickly turns to warm water and cold water. And keep it stirred occasionally to increase the oxygen content around the seed. Okay, and that concludes my program. And with that, you master naturalists can get to work here, doing all the wonderful things you do. Thank you so much. Do we have time for any questions, Robert? If we have any questions? Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, the yellow what? Oh, yes. Exactly. Yeah. I have had the same experience. What she's asking me is if the yellow poppy seeds will grow in Cameron County, in this part of the valley, because normally they're either in Hidalgo or even further in Star. I haven't had good luck with them. I just don't. So it could be a difference in the soil. What we have here in Harlingen is considered Harlingen clay. So it just may not be conducive to that. But I've also seen them in Weslaco as well. They're very lovely. Maybe if we put them in, get some dirt from Weslaco, try that. Why not? Put them in a pot. Any other questions? Yes. Really? Okay. Well, I buy mine from Sebastian Pottery in Sebastian. Yeah. And just before you buy it, really look at it. If it's got a lot of ornaments on it, sometimes those will fall off. You know, a lot of them are like little animals and this and that. You know, are really cute, but they're not real practical. I usually go for the plain, just the plain pottery that's just smooth on sides and it looks pretty firm. You know. You got yours in Progresso? Or? Yeah, just before Progresso. Right, I've been there before also. But I've had the best luck with Sebastian. And if you buy a lot of pottery there, or if you become a regular customer, they will usually give you a discount. Yeah. Yes. Anybody else? I have one online. How do I do that? I'm sorry? What was that? What was it? On a fiddlewood, they're just on the cluster where the white flowers are. They turn to seed, and they are orange, bright orange originally, and then they turn to black, which is why one of the names for fiddlewood is negrito, because the seeds turn black. And then they start to dry out, and I like to collect them really when they're dry. Anything else? Yes. Do I have native? No, I don't. I don't have the setup for that. You know, I recommend Mike Heap. He was the first native plant nurseryman here in the Valley, and he's very knowledgeable. And we sell his, the Native Plant Project sells his plants every year at the Birding Festival. I recommend Mike. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Mhm.
She gave me an Inagua now tall. And it was in July. Bare root. Whichever gardener knows, you don't plant trees in July, especially bare root. So I put it back in the very back of my yard because I knew it was going to die. Well, it's now, the trunk is about that big around, and it's about 20 feet tall.
That's wonderful. Well, it must have really liked that corner of your yard. Yes. Uh-huh. Well, I haven't tried planting them yet. I did, Alicia, I did let them dry out, and then I you know, I have them like in a paper bag, but I need to take that covering off and try. I haven't tried yet. I would soak them for sure, though, before I plant them, and put them in a pot with some good potting soil. I hear an echo here. Yes, ma'am. No.
That red stuff is soft when you first pick it, so
Mhm.
it's easy to remove right then.
Okay.
And he said, plant them fresh.
There you go.
No, you rub the red stuff off, and there's a black seed in there, and you plant that right away.
Just plant it
He
right
said
away.
that-
Well, thank you, Christina. No, I didn't know that.
Sounds like-
Just put it in. So you put yours directly in the ground? Okay, put it directly in the. Any other questions? No? Oh, another one online? Is there another one online?
Wow, I have learned so much. What a wonderful presentation.
Oh, that's nice.
And oh my gosh, I learned so much.
Well, I'll end with that. Thank you so much, everybody.
Give you this fast.
Okay, folks, with that, thank you for attending, and look forward to more information about our February meeting. And again, thank you and have a good evening.